This video will show you how to randomize quiz questions in D2L 10.3. This process is, in my opinion, pretty unintuitive, but it does work really nicely for setting up quizzes, and I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. First of all, you need to get all of the questions you want D2L to choose from for your randomized quiz into the D2L question library. You can access this question library by going to the D2L quiz tool, where I am here, and then clicking on this question library link here at the top. Now, there are quite a few different ways you can add questions to your question library, depending on if the questions are already created in D2L or not. One thing I would definitely recommend, however, is keeping your question library organized into folders, or what D2L calls sections. You can see that I already have 3 sections in my question library here, but I'm going to add another one as a demonstration. To do this, I go under New, then select Section, and follow the prompts, giving my section a name. I'm going to call it Section Sample. For now, I just need to give it a name, and I click Save. Once the section shows up, you click on it to add questions to it. Now here is where you have several options. You can import questions from a quiz that already exists in your course, and this is what you'll do if you've already created the quiz in D2L, but now want it to be randomized. If that's the case, if I want to pull questions from elsewhere in my course, I click Import. This is what the import screen looks like. First, I choose from the Source Collection drop-down menu and select the existing quiz I want to pull questions from. Then, I choose the section of that quiz where the questions I want can be found, and usually it's just going to be the collection root. Okay, I've selected this as my source collection. I've selected collection root. And now I select the actual questions that I want to pull into the quiz or into the question library. I'm just going to click on this collection root checkbox, which will highlight all of them, adding them all to the question library, and then I click Save. This adds all these questions to the section I'm in my question library. Now you also have the option to create questions here in the question library using the New menu. I can create any of these types of questions and have them here in the question library. Or if I'm using a test generator tool like Respondus, I may be able to go to Edit Course and use the Import, Export, Copy Components option to actually load an entire question library section into the quiz tool in one fell swoop. So however you go about creating your question library section, you just need to make sure that you have a section populated with questions on the question library page before you create your randomized quiz. So now that that's done, I have my section sample section here. I'm going to create a randomized quiz, and I'll get back to the quiz screen by clicking Done Editing Questions. To create our randomized quiz, I'm going to go to the quiz menu and I'm going to select New Quiz. I'm going to give my quiz a name. I'll call it Sample Random Quiz, and then hit Add Edit Questions. This screen is going to look a lot like that question library screen where I had to add in or import my questions. And I'm going to follow very similar steps to what we did on the question library, which is go to the New menu first and choose Random Section. Rather than just plain section, now I have a Random Section option. It will ask you to give your section a name. Now, it doesn't really matter what you call your random section because unless you specifically click this Show Section Name menu, your students won't see the name. But as a slight sidebar, the only time I'd really recommend showing students the name of your sections is if you're going to create a quiz that has several random sections within one quiz. For example, you might have a random section of true-false questions and then a random section of multiple choice questions. And in that case, you might want to label these different sections in the quiz. But for this example, we're going to assume that my entire quiz is one big random section, so I'm going to leave this box unchecked and just type some placeholder text there. Then I'm going to click Save. This will take you back to the sample random quiz screen. Notice that it says click a question name to edit, and that's what we're going to do by clicking the name of this placeholder section we just created. Then click the Import button. From here, you choose the section of the question library from which you want to import, and you do that by selecting that question library that we want to use for this random section, in this case, the section sample. This will cause all of those questions in that section to populate on the screen, and you make sure that all the questions you want in this random block are then checked. It's important to note here that the number of source collection questions you select should be equal to or greater than the number of questions you intend for the quiz to have. For example, if the number of questions in the random bank equals the number of questions that students are taking in the quiz, then each student will have to answer each question in the bank. But if you have more questions in your bank than you have questions on the quiz, then not every student will have the same questions on their quiz. With that said, I'm going to select all of these for my source collection and click Save. Now this last step is very important. You can see here the questions that D2L will be choosing from for this quiz. I need to type the number of questions that I want in this random section and the points that each question is worth. And note that all the questions in your random section have to be worth the same number of points. So you may have to have a couple of different random questions if your questions are worth different values. Once I put the questions I want per attempt, and I see here that I have a total of 9 questions, so I'm going to put 8 questions per attempt, and I'm going to leave it as 1 point each. Then you have to hit this Save button in order to make these changes stick. If you don't hit the Save button, it will not set up your quiz properly. After you have clicked that Save button, you click Done Editing Questions, and now you can see that my quiz has a random section that chooses 8 questions out of 9 possible things in the question library. Now at this point, you can change whatever other quiz settings you would like, for example, restrictions or the assessment, etc., and then you hit Save and Close.